Welcome to the stream. This is Live Free or Die Bard. I'm your host, Jinx. We are working on episode 7, drawing dungeons and prepping props. What is the stream? Live Free or Die Bard. We are making a 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons campaign from scratch. We're doing it on Obsidian Portal as our note-keeping tool and wiki. And if you want to follow along at home, we'll show you the web address, livefreeordiebard.obsidianportal.com. We're keeping all of our notes there. We are in the preparatory phase currently. We are making stuff for Adventure 1 and Dungeon Number 1, and that's what that's about. Over the course of the series, we will continue to make adventures, and you can use OP if you'd like to run the adventures straight off of there, or get inspired and make your own if you want to. This is family-friendly stream. We are, if you're a novice, if you're an experienced GM, hopefully we have something for everybody. For those of you who are new, welcome. For returning people, thanks for coming back and for participating in chat. That is one thing that you should feel free to do at any point. If you have any suggestions, please make them in the chat, and I will try and add your suggestions to the game somehow. So far, a good portion of our adventure and world has been chat created, so feel free to jump in. We're looking for musical puns. Live Free or Die Bard is all about musical puns. All right. So, spoiler warning, if you do want to be a player in this campaign later on down the road, you will encounter some spoilers. Hopefully we run for long enough that you will have forgotten most of it, so even if you plan on playing, feel free to watch. Let's do a quick review of what we've done so far. This is episode 7. Episodes 1 through 6, we talked about concepts and themes, player archetypes, mapping basics, meta plot. We had a tribute episode for some rock stars who passed away, and we worked on Adventure 1. And last time we got our adventurers to the dungeon where we need them to go. This week we're working on the dungeon itself. So let's see where we are. This is your front page. We are going to our adventure log. The adventure log normally on OP is where you would record sessions of your adventures. You would have your players posting player journals or accounts of what was going on. We're using it to store our actual adventures themselves. So far, Act 1, Chapter 1, Adventure 1, 2 tickets to Paradise. We have split it into several parts. Take me down to Paradise City. Characters arrive and see the sights. They encounter a couple of NPCs and get a taste of the meta plot, which is that the Church of Rhea is magically branding spellcasters and the like so that they can't use their magic anymore in an effort to control them. We've gotten them to the inn where we want them to have their base. We're working on part 2 here. We built the city. They have, just scroll down here to get to the section. Priscilla, innkeeper of the Heartbreak, has approached them, asked them to stay at her inn and help her with a rat problem. Rat with 2 T's. They go down in, presuming they follow instructions anyway, they go down, you're allowed to railroad a little bit at the beginning. They go down into the cellar and help her with her rat problem. Then hopefully we made some custom, some extra tough rats, by the way, last time. They will discover the broken wall. This is an investigate or perception DC 5, so our first skill check of the game. You can also do this in 5th edition with a passive perception. That's just what they're noticing, even when they're not really trying to notice anything. That's explained in your rules. There's no roll associated with that. You just get it. So this is one of those, when you get them down to the dungeon, you want them to find this, otherwise the adventure will not proceed, so you want to make the DC nice and easy. If you've never played D&D before, your DC is your difficulty class For your check, you're rolling a 20-sided die, usually adding or subtracting modifiers to that die and trying to hit or exceed this target number to successfully make that check. In the low-level campaign, a DC 5, 10, and 15 is generally what you're looking at for your low-level stuff, because your first-level characters will not have very many points in anything, so they're going to be relying mostly on luck and things like that. So you want to make sure your DCs are nice and low so that they can have that sense of achievement right off the bat, so they're not completely stymied in the first area. So they discover a broken wall. You find a collapsed section of stonework in the northern wall of the cellar that reveals a gap just large enough for one person to slip through into the chamber beyond. And then we've talked briefly, the chat came up with some great ideas about what's underneath the city. That they have discovered this new dungeon. We're going to give them access to a little bit. So what's under the city is the hidden temple of the Muses. We're going to talk about in detail about what that's all about. We know that when they're down here, we want them to find a magically locked door, and we'll probably have them find one part of a key. We called it the octave key last time. We can, if you have any better names, feel free. We know what's down here is a giant pipe organ underneath the city that is both a puzzle and a magical weapon of some kind. And we know that there are also many secret passages that will give the players access to other sections of the town that they would not normally have access to. It will give them an escape route outside of town, and an access point to the mansion where the masquerade ball in part 3, I believe, is happening, and access later on to the temple keep, which will be the fortress of our bad guys in this section of the campaign. So that's where we are so far. Let's talk about dungeons in general. Go to our wiki here. I believe we have it in religion. Yeah. Okay. This is one of our little religious things that we'll talk about when we're doing it. Okay, dungeons by the book. If you're new to making dungeons, they're basically, it's an old tradition. The heroes go underground. It's symbolic. They fight some stuff down there. You take on some challenges, and then you emerge victorious, or you don't emerge ever again. If you're looking for dungeons information, if you have any of the source books, this is where these will be very helpful to you. This is the Dungeon Master's Guide, appropriately named for all of your a lot of your dungeon needs. In the DMG, for short, you will find your dungeon basics on page 99. This explains sort of how to set up your essential stuff in your dungeon, what's in there, generally what kind of stuff you're going to want to start with. There's a really cool section in the back, which I will go over briefly for those of you who do not have this book. It's about random dungeons. They've got a bunch of different tables. Let's see if I can show you a little bit if my autofocus cooperates. They've got some random tables in here in the DMG in the back on page 290. You can roll for starting area and what's in different passages, the width of the passages. You can roll for doors and what's behind the doors, and sort of just, if you don't feel like making up your own dungeon, you can use this as a quick and dirty replacement, and then apply a little bit of logic to it to clean it up and then ready to roll. You could also use this as a little mini game if you wanted to. Have your players roll for what they find next. If you're doing like a one-shot, you just need to fill some time. This might be a fun way to do that. It goes over chambers and stairs, connecting areas, and then on the next page it's got how to stock your dungeon. Depending on what kind of dungeon you have. They recommend the following types of dungeons: a death trap, a lair, a maze, a mine, a planar gate, a stronghold, a temple or shrine, a tomb, treasure vault. And then it's got some handful of general dungeon chambers, the state of the chamber you can roll for, the contents of the chamber, monsters and motivations, if they are there to conquer the dungeon or hide from enemies or whatever, you can roll on that. So really cool stuff. It's got traps, effects, random things, tricks, dungeon dressing, which we may end up using later on if we need to fill out our dungeon. So good resource in the back of this. Lots of goodies to populate your thing. And then right after that are monster lists if you need that to start putting monsters in. So good resource, Dungeon Master's Guide in the back. Other books that you could possibly use if you have PDFs or source books. I've only got a few. I've got Xanathar's Guide to Everything. They have a section on traps on page 113, which is really cool. And then you can use the DMG to do other regular traps, but they revisit the topic in Xanathar's. Also, let me show you Strongholds and Followers. This is on loan to me by a friend. This one's more about building your own stronghold and attracting followers. It's got some army rules in it for doing big combats, but you can get a couple of inspirational ideas out of here too if you like. Our particular dungeon is going to be musical themed, so I've looked at on page 45. There's a thing about the Bard's Theater, some domain effects and stronghold actions. These are basically pseudo-magical things that happen inside of a particular stronghold. They've got stuff in here about bard followers that might show up at your stronghold. This is a good book if you're making your own stronghold later on. At level 1 you probably won't have the means to do that, but we can get a couple of ideas out of here also. One of them in particular I'm going to use, it's a stronghold action in this book, which is where the bard who operates the stronghold in this case could activate one of these things. But you can regain inspiration dice, and I think we might actually use that one for our particular dungeon in here, since it was created by, or the followers of, the Muses. Now, if you weren't here last time, this is one of our religious orders, or religious sects, that has been supplanted by the Church of Rhea and subverted. So this is who built our dungeon. So you want to ask the who, what, when, where, whys, and hows of your dungeon before you start making it. So the who is fairly critical to understand. So the Muses were our pantheon of song goddesses. We have a nice little list here of punny names. Diana, the supreme one. Aretha, the respected. Garland, Witch Slayer. That's Judy Garland, if you didn't catch that. Joplin, Heartpiece. Cher, the Believer, and so on and so forth. So we've got our pantheon of song goddesses, and then they were opponents of the Church of Rhea, who are our current bad guys. So the priestesses and high priestesses, known for their powerful song magic, which the church envied and abhorred. So they took them down over the course of centuries. This is one of their hidden bases. That's what this particular place is, this dungeon that we're making today. So who built it? Their followers. So it's going to be themed around muses and music and inspiration and this powerful organ that's down in the basement. Other questions you can ask, what did they build it with? And at this point I think we'll make an actual entry for the dungeon itself. Let's go back to our places here. So the Kingdom of Calliope is our kingdom where we are currently adventuring. Cities, towns, and villages. We will go in and find Paradise City. And within Paradise City, we already have a couple of things going on here. The Heartbreak Inn is where we started our first adventure. It's going to be our mini headquarters for now. And we want to add the dungeon that's below. So we're going to go down into our edit. That's the little pencil and paper icon down here. And we're going to make a new entry, which is the hidden temple of the Muses. Okay, so the hidden temple of the Muses, we'll give a brief description here, and then we'll go in and fill out some more information. So this forgotten series of chambers just beneath the surface of Paradise City is, and now we can start filling in some of our details. So what did they build it with? We can start adding some puns at this point. I think some pink granite stones and bricks would be appropriate, built by perhaps an ancient stonemason named Floyd. I think that would be all right. So we have was constructed with pink bricks comprising the outer wall. And let's see, how did they build it? I think they probably just built it with good old-fashioned, shovels and picks and whatnot. Pink bricks comprising the outer wall. We don't want to give away too much information yet because we haven't written the whole dungeon yet, so we'll just give them a little overview. It contains the secrets of the nearly forgotten religion. Okay. Now we go down to the bottom and hit save. And now we have this. You'll notice the color is different. Links that you've already filled in information for will show up one color. And then new links will show up another color. So now to get to that page, we click on the Hidden Temple of the Muses. And this is where we can store more of our details about our hidden temple. And then we can link to this page from other parts of the area. It's not Pink Floyd, yeah. Trying to build a stairway to heaven. Yeah, that'll be a whole other thing. I was thinking about Led Zeppelin. I think we could do some airships. I think that would be appropriate later on when we want to do some more high flying adventures. I think that would work out great, and we can have all kinds of great jokes in there because Led Zeppelin had plenty of fantasy elements in their songs. Okay. That's how they built it. All right. Where is it? That's another critical question to ask. We are going to do a little bit of mapping stuff here. For those of you who were not here last time, I will show you. Let's get down to the. This is our town. This is Paradise City. And then I have an overlay that goes on top of that. And that's basically the outline of the dungeon proper. So it's going to sit underneath these ancient walls made of pink brick. And we're entering from over here at the Heartbreak when they go into the cellar. So we will have access to this little chunk up in this area. So where does it encompass? I was assuming because the outer walls are all ancient, they went ahead and used as much of the space as possible. So the main dungeon will exist completely under the town, kind of spread out. We're only going to give our level 1 players access to a chunk of it, and the rest of it's going to be sealed off somehow, and they're not going to be able to get to the main central point. where the giant pipe organ is yet. That's true. A lot of that. I don't know. The references are so subtle in Led Zeppelin songs to that. I just don't know. Probably goes over most people's heads. It's poetic, really. Okay, so that's that. So let's go back to our description. I'll move this out of the way. All right. So we'll do a little bit of history and a little bit of. It's actually a good idea to start to subdivide this so it's a little bit easier. If you're skimming through this while you're running things, it may make it easier to have things subdivided. So to do bold, we're using markup language called textile here, which is like shorthand HTML basically. So to do bold in the editor, you put asterisks around it. So we'll do the history, and then you follow the same pattern for some of the other ones that you want to do. You want to do location, and then we'll fill those in. So the history we already know a little bit of. The hidden temple of the Muses was built secretly centuries ago. We can decide specifically how long later on if we need to. To house a secret weapon. And we don't need to say too much more beyond that until we go to design that particular weapon, the pipe organ itself. The town above it was, let's say, constructed as a cover operation to hide the cult's efforts from, and at this point we can link to another page which we've already made. Let's do a wiki link, and you can scroll down if you want to, or you can search up here, and we're going to insert the Church of Rhea. What's on the left is your slug. That's the page that you're pointing to. What's on the right is the text that you want to display. I want it to say, instead of Church of Rhea, the Church of Rhea. And then we can move on. So that's the basic history. It was later abandoned as the Muse cult began to dwindle in power. All right, and let's do a preview to make sure it looks like how we want it to look. That's what I'm looking for. All right, location. And this is where we'll define our boundaries in text form before we do our map. So the temple is underground, just beneath the surface of the foundation stones of, and then I think we can do a link back to Paradise City. I like to do lots of links because when you're navigating, it's much easier if you have a link to click on to just zip yourself there. even though you could just go back a page or two from this one, depending on where you got there from. But that's handy to do. We can also do, I think they call it breadcrumbing, where you can put links down at the bottom or the top of your page to go back to critical pages that you always want to get to without clicking too many times. But that's kind of cleanup work that we can do towards the end of adventure writing to make it nice and easy to navigate. The temple is underground, just beneath the surface of the foundation stones of Paradise City. It occupies the space in between the ancient walls that protect the above ground populace, with a few pipe tunnels, which we'll get to in a little bit, that extend beyond that boundary. Okay, so we got a basic idea of where it is. We know that it does not go down very far. This is a coastal town, so we can't go out into the ocean too much or down too deep, or we will end up with some flooding, which of course we can put a little of that in there if we want to indicate some realism. Anytime you're digging underground next to the sea, you will likely get flooding. Okay, let's save, or create rather. That's our first time. All right, and here's our page so far. We got a little bit of history, a little bit of location. So if you're skimming, you can look for the bold words. You can change the size of those if you want to, so they pop out a little bit bigger. But that's good enough for now. We're just still taking, we're in the note-taking phase. Oh, forgot to check chat. When am I going to start looking for players for real to play this campaign? I imagine I will need to get a couple levels worth of adventures written first. And then I was thinking about maybe running an online game for people who were interested online. I may run a separate game for my local gaming group once we get going. And it'd be neat to compare the differences between the two. And then we could stream both of them, perhaps. Yeah, Kalik is obviously too busy to be the sole player. You are correct. I invited him as a sort of a demonstration about how to do that. Yeah, so I figure once I get a handful of adventures written, we can start opening that up. Inside jokes. Yeah, all bard party was fun. The guy who usually makes bards, I would point out, thought it was a joke and didn't make a bard at level 1. He was trying desperately to get to level 2, just join the fun. He didn't make it. He also died. Okay, let's see. So we know who built it. We know what did they build it with, and how. We know where it is. When did they build it? Right now, we don't have a firm timeline on how long it takes to disappear a religion. I'm thinking, if you think about, in reality, when was the Dark Ages? Like 1200 AD, and we're in 2000 something now. So, 800 years is probably plenty long to eradicate certain aspects of culture to the point that they're simply mysteries and whatnot. So we're thinking somewhere in the 500 to 1,000 year range for something like that, but we don't have to nail that down immediately. What we do need to know is that what's down in our dungeon, if it was down there, let's say 800 years ago, a lot of stuff won't have lasted that long. So what will have lasted? Stone, properly treated ceramics and metals may be good enough. They haven't been exposed to too many elements. No one's alive down there unless they're somehow immortal or extremely long-lived. Things could have gotten in and will exist. Certainly the rats have gotten in. We already know that much. But yeah, you need to keep in mind your timeline when you're getting ready to create dungeons, for what's down there. Also, think about who else moved in. We know already from, if you were here last time, that the magic item, which I'll show you, this guy, Conductor's Baton of Branding. This is the one that removes magical powers. It removes a character or creature's access to magic spells, powers, and abilities. The golden wand with a large ruby clutched at one end. Upon it are written verses from Holy Scripture in runes too small to read. When activated, it glows briefly, leaving a black and white brand upon whomever it touches. I believe this was maybe Jim Rockford's idea originally, to do the brand from the labeling from the RIAA in the, I guess it was the 80s. And it takes away your music magic. We know, we discussed it briefly, and we can actually add it now so that it's here and we don't lose it. So that's our little description. We can also say this wand was the magic item that helped power the massive pipe organ. We don't have a good name for that one yet. We might have to come up with one later on. Any specific plans for linking items to a campaign? I've just been making separate hyperlinks. I just use the item section. Oops. On the side, you can go into your settings, make sure that that's turned on. I think that's what I'm using for it. And then you can there's a way to do links, so you can link to items, but I'll get to that in a second because I just learned it last week and I will probably need a refresher. One was the magic item that helped power the massive pipe organ in the hidden temple of muses, but was removed by someone. We don't have a specific person yet, but we know it's our bad guys, the Church of Rhea. So, critical clue, we know that somehow the Church of Rhea either got down into the dungeon and removed that particular item, or perhaps someone brought it to them. Oh yeah, thank you to the mod. Item Slug has the same structure as the character slug. Yeah, don't forget your little colon. I think the colon is critical there. And then the straight up and down line between here and test here. We can actually try that if you like. Let me save. And then we'll go back to our let's go to our description of the dungeon, which is down here. I might make a separate link later on just for dungeons, so it's easier for a GM running a campaign to get to dungeons quickly. Okay, so let's put that in the history section. Time moment. So how's the secret weapon? Maybe a separate entry would be good. Let's call it the organ for now, because it's going to have plenty of The pipe organ. We'll do a cool name later on if anybody thinks of a good one. Could name it after a band that had prominent pipe organ or a rock organ in it. Okay. This powerful musical magic item was fueled in part by a special wand known as, and then we're going to try this slug. If I can, let me pull it up again, make sure I got the right slug for the conductor's baton. If you go into your edit, or you can look up here in your URL, I think it's the same thing. Here's your slug. You'll notice in this one, this is why it didn't work last week, because I forgot you can't have apostrophes in your slug. So you need to replace that with a dash. So I'm just going to copy that particular guy. So we do double bracket, colon, put the slug in there. Do we need a space or not? I'm gonna try it without the space, and then we'll come back to it. Known as the conductor's baton. And then we'll preview. It seems to work in the preview, so I think we got it right. Yep. Because if you have any special characters like that, they'll get replaced by a dash. But crazy handy. And there we go. So now we know if we're down here looking at the pipe organ, we need to pull up the information on the conductor's baton. Click that. Takes us right there. We're good to go. Okay, easy peasy. Yep, thanks, Jim. Doors. Ray Manzarek on Vox organ. Fender Rhodes bass piano. Nice. Manzarek is a cool fancy name. I'll look him up real quick. Right. Checking his Wikipedia entry. I don't know if you guys can. Yeah, you guys won't be able to see that. I don't think. Oh no, you can. There it is. Co-founder. Nice. Manzarek Krieger. Nice. One of the best keyboardists ever. I think we should call it the Manzarek organ. I think that'd be a cool. Kind of tribute thing to it. Alright, let's go in and change that right now while we're thinking about it. The Manzarek. Manzarek pipe organ. Save. And then because this is a fixed thing, it's not something transportable, I probably won't make an item entry for it. I might later on, especially if you find a good graphic for it, but we'll see how that goes. It is part of the dungeon though, and will be you can use it later on once they get it activated, which I figure that'll be a multi-step process to try and get the thing activated if the players want to do that. Maybe they will be able to figure out how to use it. I was thinking, since it's a pipe organ, we could have a whole plot line about maybe it's a steam pipe organ, so they have to re-engage the how to get the water into the steam chamber, and then they have to generate heat somehow. We could call that adventure Light My Fire, something like that. And then maybe they have to figure out they have to destroy it later, and they can rage against the machine. It's gonna be super easy to write titles for stuff. Okay, that's cool. So we got a little backstory. Okay, that's when they did it, why they built it, to put the organ down there and keep it secret. They never got to use it, perhaps, or maybe they did use it and found it was too powerful. We'll come up with that stuff later on. Okay, let's talk about the dungeon itself. Oh, how about a companion item? Something like a cursed bandana that levels with the character. Starts by occasionally replacing expletives with a tone and clean versions. That's good. That's good. Something of censorship. A bandana of censorship. That's cool. Let's make a quick item for that. If you haven't been here before, to make a new entry, you go up to the little plus sign in your area. Bandana of censorship. Maybe this is some other experiment that they did trying to master this particular kind of magic stuff. So this is going to be cursed. Then you hit tab. It's a magic item, but it's not an artifact. Quick description. We'll make it related to a black and white bandana. Yeah, that's probably good for now. Oh yeah, the new in the top bar. That's this little section up here. If you need a new anything, you go up to that's top bar and pull it down. This gives you access to all that. There's usually 2 ways to do a thing on Obsidian Portal. So if you forget the one way and remember the other, then you're good to go. Black and white bandana. We can mention what it does, since we're not hiding anything in this campaign. In a normal campaign, you would not tell players right away what their cursed item does. You would go down to the GM only area and put in that. But I want everything to be publicly searchable here, so that you all can use this for your own games. So we're going to leave that in the public fields. Black and white bandana that slowly censors freedom of speech. Okay, let's do a quick. So this top section is for your statistics. Bottom section is for your biographical, historical information. So we will do once donned, bandana cannot be removed normally after 1 day of wear. The victim is going to copy it straight out of your idea, Philos. Will notice that occasionally their foul language and expletives. It has a spell checker if you need it. Will be replaced with family friendly phrases. And then we'll let them, if they level up, fully silenced. Yeah, I like that. If the victim gains a level of experience while cursed in this way, all of their curse words, lewd gestures, and other offensive acts will be suppressed. That's not how you spell suppressed. That's why we have spell check. There it is, 2 P's. If they level up a second time while still cursed, they become completely mute until a cursed bandana is removed. Cool idea. Create. I don't have a cool image yet, but I'll look for one this week. It's a nasty curse. Puts them on the mic stand. That'd be a cool item later on too. Some kind of a cool mic stand with bandanas on it that you can grab and add to your performance. That is one thing we'll get to eventually, and maybe next week, depending on how far we get. Is I want to get into the concept of what you're doing with all this musical magic band stuff, music duels, all that kind of cool stuff, because we need to write some custom rules for that and how it impacts this particular world. I was envisioning basically like any kind of music instrument you have, you can also kind of add weapon to that, and we'll come up with how to do that price wise and crafting wise and all that. And then also music duels, we need some formalized rules for those, that kind of thing, but that's a future episode. Okay, so that's pretty good for now. We'll come up with some more information on the bandana of censorship later, because that could play in very well to our meta plot. Let's move on to the dungeon. If you will recall, this is our main town map we've got going on. These are our map markers for some of the different locations in here. You can move those around as you see fit, or add more. So this is what we're looking at for Paradise City. It's a seaside town with some docks. It has an ancient wall that runs around it. There is a temple keep, a little castle up on the hill that the bad guys occupy. The main town is here. It has a big square in the middle, a couple of courtyards here and there. It has a couple of mansions. We determined the mayor's mansion and also Marilyn's mansion. It's pretty funny. We've got the Heartbreak Inn, where Priscilla presides. We have all of our punny crops that live outside and are grown outside. And we've got a well in the middle. So I'm thinking for the dungeon itself, the main, we just sort of plot out where we want to put things. The main organ, the MacGuffin of interest here, the pipe organ, is probably right dead center. It may use the well itself as some sort of as part of the water system for the steam machine that runs the thing that they may have to reactivate later on as the characters. I was thinking also that it probably has, for our access points to get out of town, a handful of long pipes that run through, and then the dungeon itself will be in sections, and we will part of this low-level adventure series is going to be them finding new ways to access the rest of the dungeon. So they'll know they won't be able to get to everything right away, and then move on later on. So I don't draw as well on the computer as I do with pen and paper, so I think we're going to do that instead, just to make it a little bit easier. And if I've set this up correctly, we can switch over to that now. And there we go. Okay, so I've made a little sketch. Let me move this guy off to the side a bit. Let's see if you can see that. Okay, so there you get it. Sort of a side-by-side. It's not a perfect comparison, but you get the general idea. Okay, this is upside down for me, so if I do any upside down things, sorry about that. We'll work on getting the autofocus. It won't be perfect because I am fairly new to streaming, and this is a moderate budget camera. So what we're going to do, you may not be able to see too well, but I've already pencil sketched out an outline of what we're looking at. I'm going to draw it in pen to give you an idea of what we need in terms of a dungeon map. I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'll do an outline, and then we'll do the section that we're working on. And then we'll start to fill in what we want in the section of the dungeon here. So let's start with our outer walls. We'll have to see what colors show up very well here. One thing you do want to keep in mind when you're doing Obsidian Portal maps, Obsidian Portal likes square maps. It's for the tiling, for your zoom in and zoom out, I think, is why it was set up long before. I don't know if anybody knows exactly why, but that's how it is. So you're going for a square map, so try and keep it as square as possible, otherwise it'll get a little stretched. So I'm going to draw our outer wall of our town, and we'll see if it can show up on here. I'll make it fairly big. Yeah, you can kind of see that. Once we get more stuff on here, the autofocus will work a little better. And we will be able to do a bit more detailed work. So I'm making these walls extra big because in order to support a decent amount of weight up above, you have to make your foundations wider as you go down to spread the load out. So remember, we are dealing with brick construction and probably some stone in there too. Not like concrete or anything with rebar in it. So what I will do with these particular drawings is, once I'm finished with them, I will scan them in with my office scanner and then manipulate them in like a Photoshop style program. I'm not going to draw every little detail here, but I will give you an idea of how I go about making things look like I want them. Keep in mind that in the majority of your pen and paper games, your players are not going to see like 90% of the work that you do. So a lot of this is going to be kind of just for you to keep track of stuff. In this particular instance, though, on OP, you can see all that stuff because you can post it. So what I'm doing is making the little bricks. They're going to be fairly large foundation stones. There's going to be a continuous ring around the city because they were trying to protect their pipe organ from all manner of invaders. And keep in mind, in D&D you have burrowing creatures, so your defenses are not going to look exactly like, let's say, medieval England. They're going to be a little bit different. Okay, so this will not come through perfectly on my not perfect webcam, but I am drawing the bricks. I'm just going to do around the little section that we're going to use for today, and then I will add more details later on and then shop it so it looks nice. The stuff that you do, of course, does not have to be perfect. You can use mapping programs if you want to get a little bit more, I would call them professional looking results. I am going for a little bit more theater of the mind style. I do not need my scales to be accurate. I just need it to line up with stuff that's already on our town map. Let's go up to the corner here, and we'll call that good for now. Okay. That's a good start. If you'll recall from our other map, if you were here last time, this is about where we're starting, right in this section. So we're just going to expand from here and see where they get to. Yeah, if you want players to see it, you do kind of have to shove it in their face or give them a reason. For example, one game that I did was based in a very large city. The whole game was going to be based in that city for the most part. So like game one, I just gave them a big giant poster board map of the city. That seemed to work out pretty well. They bought it for like a silver piece or something. It was the first thing they bought in the game. But it was a physical handout. So let's outline this guy so he shows up a little bit better on camera. We will outline in, let's see if gray makes any difference. My hand will be in the way for some of these shots. It's not really a good way to do that. Otherwise, I do have a drawing tablet, but it is an Apple product, and I'm on the PC, and it seems like a lot of work. So we're going to go old school. Draw by hand. Okay, that pops a little bit better. That's just a gray marker. Yeah, cameraman would be nice. Okay, so this little dot in the middle, by the way, is the well. I just put that there for reference so I can keep everything kind of lined up. I have drawn some small pencil markings for things where I know where I want them to be. So the first thing that we need is the crack in the cellar where they get into the dungeon. I'm going to start drawing in black so that shows up pretty well. Again, this is upside down for me, so if it looks a little funky, that's what that's all about. So we'll put a little symbol here for where the crack is. And then I won't worry about labels quite yet. Just want to get some other stuff in here first. Okay, so they come in from here. They drop down a crack. They encounter the edge of this wall. And I think that they need this particular chamber that they start in, or maybe a hallway. Let's start them in a hallway. That seems better. So maybe the corridor runs along this outside edge of this wall for access, because there would have been people down here moving supplies, building the pipe organ and all of its accessories that go with it. I think over here they will encounter their first iron pipe. So I am not a medieval engineer, but we're going to assume for fantasy purposes that these people had means of preserving iron and steel such that it would last several hundred years, and we're going to say it's encased in some kind of ceramic clay, something like that. So let's find a good, like a dark red. That sounds like a rusty clay-like color. So I want to draw my first pipe coming out here. Try and make these lines nice and thick so that you can see. This will go sort of through the foundation. So we'll make a little dotted line here. That may not show up very well for you, but it's a dotted line. And we'll continue on in this fashion. And if I recall, our main map, where you're looking at now on the regular town map, the overworld map, I should be about where that little farmhouse is. So what I'm thinking for these pipes is you have a giant steam machine underground. You need a way to vent it to blow off excess steam so the whole thing doesn't explode on you, which might be a fun thing for later on, maybe like level 5 or so. So this will be one of those pipes that will let them vent things. It hasn't been used in a long time, so the people living in that farmhouse may not have any idea that it's actually that's what they're sleeping on top of, is this venting chamber. Okay, so we'll put that there. I'm not going to put where it goes yet because I don't want to limit my options completely. Let's put that marker away. And let's draw a couple more chambers. So I want this hallway to intersect with that particular pipe and go no further. I want them to run into that pipe and not be able to get beyond it currently, unless they hack their way through it, which they may. So let's move on to this other side. I want them to have a door on this side. So let's put that here. And then let's have this continue. So I've drawn a teeny tiny little door there. It will, I don't know if I can get this up better so that you can see it without ruining my setup here. Everything's backwards. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at currently. If you want to get a slightly closer up view. I'll see if I can lower my camera just a touch without messing anything up too badly. If you hear any crashes or anything like that, that means I pushed too hard. Okay, so now that we're in close, you may be able to see. Get down there. A little bit more. Move this over some. So adjusting. Precision work. Cinematographers around the world would be proud. Okay. So here's our little section that we're working on. So they're blocked off on one side by a big pipe that they're going to have to investigate. Over on this side, I don't want them to be able to go too horrifically far, and I don't want to give them too many options all at once. Remember, this is only section 1 of Adventure 1, so we can't let them spend all of their game time down here. We need to make sure that they are boxed in where we want them to go initially, and then start to open up options later on. So I'm going to give them another door. I don't know where any of these doors go yet, but part of the fun of dungeon making is kind of coming up with that as you go. And I am drawing in pen because I'm risky, avant-garde, and it's courage. Let's just call it what it is. And then right here next to this door, normally this would move on down until they got to another pipe, which I will add here. Make sure I'm still in shot. Let's add our second pipe right here. So the reason I'm thinking that these corridors dead end at the pipes is because they would have had to inspect them and make sure everything was in working order. We might give them some kind of device there that works as a puzzle or something along those lines. That's where my mind is currently headed. There's going to be another vent pipe, which will give them another way out of town. I want these to be just big enough that you could squeeze through them if you had a hole cut through. This particular one may end up lining up with a building, or it may end up lining up with just a random field somewhere that suddenly erupts in steam and dirt. But that's where that will go eventually. So this corridor will dead end here. But I want to start indicating that this is a fairly old area in disrepair. Remember, we're trying to give them as much information as possible, showing them instead of telling them. Let's finish our brickwork. And I want there to be a slight collapse here that partially covers this door. My thinking is that they can see it, but they will have to dig it out to get to it. Okay, so we have partial collapse next to this door, something for them to work towards to know that there's more down here to uncover than just what they see. Okay, let's figure out what they need to find while they're down here before we go too much further. Remember when you're designing dungeons that your walls underground are going to have to be a little bit thicker unless you're going to need, unless you have some kind of magical means of keeping them up. I'm going to need you to redo all the things you did in the last hour there, miss. Sorry. You'll have to watch the VOD after I'm done. Basically, we did a recap. We went over the source books that I have, where to find dungeon information about how to make a dungeon. We made a couple items and information kind of things. We talked about who and why and when and where, who built this dungeon, and we started drawing. Okay, so we got our collapse section, we got that. Let's make our first chamber that they can get to. And I think it should occupy this little section right here. Again, I don't know what it is yet. But I'm going to sort of make some reasonably thick walls. Again, this does not have to be in any way perfect. I'm going to indicate that these are solid. We can color them in later. And then we kind of want this to follow the sort of the same pattern in some ways as the town itself, so it will spoke out from the central point. But we're going to have I think just maybe a little 2-room kind of thing going on. So let's make this going back here. And close it off. And then, yeah, let's make this our door right in here. So we've got a little triangular room with a door. And then I think maybe one more small, possibly a storage room or something like that. Right, like that. Again, we're giving them just a taste. We don't want them to be able to access everything right away. They're going to come down here, they're going to find a clue, maybe a little touch of the history of the place, and then that will hopefully get them interested in the greater mystery beyond. Okay. So, let's get this lined up. So here's what we're working with so far. So you get the crack from the cellar up above. You have this long corridor running around the outside. Hopefully they'll be able to piece together that this is also the wall. We can mention that in our description. This is the foundation of the wall up above them. They have a clay protected, ceramic protected iron pipe that they can investigate with maybe some kind of inspection port or emergency release valve or something so they can figure out what that is. On the other side they have a collapsed section of that's partially blocking the way here, and they have a partially buried door that perhaps if they want to they can spend some time digging out and get further access. They have one main door that will lead them into this triangular chamber, and then another door that will lead them into this small room that may have been for storage. All right, that's a good start. Let's start with that and then fill in what we need. So let me leave this here, try and get it lined up such that the map is similar. So I will do labels for these guys later on when I am shopping so that all the text matches. But for now, let's go back to our adventure log. And we're going to start, let's go down to where we left off. All right, so they discover the broken wall in this section here, and then we're going to start describing from this point on, if they descend, what they see. Priscilla, the innkeep, does not know anything about it. Heading on down, these are our notes so far. Let's call this, I'm going to make this bold. So if you remember, you encase it in asterisks, it becomes bold. We're going to call this the Hidden Temple of the Muses, Section 1, because this will be a larger dungeon that they will access as they go. Let's keep our notes below here, and let's start writing. Okay. So what we've done so far, just to keep everything on the same, we can prettify this later. The stuff in bold and in quotes is what we're reading out loud. We may need to change the quotes part if that messes things up with our slugs and whatnot. So that's what you're reading out loud in your DM voice. When you have a section that is an NPC speaking, they're going to be in colorful writing with quotes around it. And we'll try and keep all of that kind of similar. So whatever you want to read out loud, we're going to make it bold. So back down here. Okay, Hidden Temple of the Muses, section 1. So they've just come down through the broken wall. So we want it to be, I believe it's, let's do those, and we'll do some quotes, and in between that we will write, you descend down a pile of stones into a corridor. That's a dark corridor that runs to, let's see, from this perspective, it would be to their left and to the right. To your left and right. Before you is a large wall comprised of massive bricks with a pinkish hue. They extend upward into the slate slab ceiling where tiny roots have found gaps and have spread seeking water. Okay, so on the main map, I believe they're pretty close to a guardhouse. So I want to indicate to them that they are not that far underground. So I'm going to have some auditory details coming through. So they come down here. You can hear through a layer of earth and cobblestones the din of the guards, town guards, at the nearby gatehouse changing shifts. Okay, so we've indicated that they're not that far underground. You got roots coming down, so they're near the earth layer, the topsoil layer. You've got the guards within shouting distance, so they don't feel too terribly in danger unless they're afraid of the guards, which they might be after having seen them assist the church in branding people and taking away their magic. They're down here. At this point, as the DM, you would probably have to figure out how they are doing light sources. There are rules for that in 5th Ed D&D. Basically, it's if you're in any kind of dim, really dim lighting conditions, poor lighting conditions, but can still see, you're at disadvantage to anything that requires sight. If you're in actual pretty close to pitch blackness or complete darkness, then you are effectively blind, and that's a status effect that it's in the back of the player's handbook, I think, for if you are effectively blind. So that's what's going on down here in terms of light. So in theory, they will, at this point, you could say, okay, You can't see much beyond the darkness. So, all right. They've descended. They're looking at a corridor that runs to the left and right. We show them there's a wall in front of them. We tell them where they are. Let's move on from there. So now we're going to, we need to give some of these areas designators, which we will figure out later on where to put them on the map. So this is section 1, and then we'll call this part corridor. Maybe give it a descriptive. Yeah, let's call it corridor A for now. So corridor A. Let's see if this looks like what we want it to look like with our preview button. So we're down here. Okay. Corridor A. They'll look on their map to see where corridor A is. We'll fill that in later. You read this section and then you move on. Okay, so for the DM's purposes, they're using the map at this point to navigate. The players, you may or may not have access to the map. You can do a cool trick with, if you're using a projector or a TV or a laptop or something, you can reveal the map piece by piece. If you're using a virtual tabletop kind of scenario. Will the kobold learn how to defeat adventurers? Yes. We're revealing all the secrets here. Performance check for the DM. Yeah. That's what we're all about. That's what it's all about. Down the road, maybe we'll sing some parody songs, because that's one of my favorite things to do. And I will earn DM points so I can level up. Okay, so we got corridor A. We'll put that on our map later on. So from here, they could move down towards the pipe. They can move to the door. They can move to the rubble. So let's go ahead and list those in order with the pipe A. And we'll do our description. The corridor. Curves at an angle following the same line as the city wall above ground. So hopefully that clues them in that they're up against the city wall. Only a few strides ahead, the passage is completely blocked by a huge cylindrical barrier. This they don't know it's a pipe yet, but they're about to. This object runs horizontally. Oops. Cutting through the brick foundation wall on your right and Let's just say cutting through both walls. Walls on either side. It appears to be made out of fired clay. Okay, at this point we're going to give them the opportunity to investigate. So just below that we're going to give the DM information about what's down here. And I'll put that in parentheses for now. We can make sure all our formatting matches later on so that everything's lined up and perfect, but this works for now. Just, again, trying to get your notes on digital paper while you're thinking of stuff. That's the critical part. Okay. This is an iron pipe sealed with hardened clay to preserve and protect it. Okay, I want to give the adventurers at this point a little bit of a challenge. So when I do, especially a low-level dungeon, we had mentioned before in another episode, we were going to try and do at least one skill test while we're down here, at least one trap or similar dangerous obstacle, at least one puzzle, riddle, or mystery while we're down here, and then the potential for some combat or a foe to overcome, if not kill. Puts boiling water on the floor. It's a very kobold thing to do. Kobolds are some of my favorites, actually, because they're tricksters who do tactics, and that's what I like. We haven't encountered any kobolds yet, though. So we will eventually have some combat, but I'm thinking more of the vermin variety instead of the highly intelligent, very capable kobolds. So let's give our adventurers some kind of combination of mystery and challenge while we're down here. Keep in mind, let's save this while we're here. We are thinking about our player archetypes. These are the things that the players want from the game. In this particular scenario, we're looking to Ezra the Explorer, who wants to check out this dungeon and find out what it's all about. Wanda the World Builder might be looking at it as, ooh, if nobody's down here using this, they have free real estate. Maybe we can do something with it. We're training Norbert the Noob, who's never played a game before, or has never played this kind of game before. So we're concentrating on these three while we're down here. And we're giving Eddie the Escapist fun as we can. Not so much role-playing for Alice the Actor right now, unless they are doing inter-party role-playing. There's no NPCs down here yet. And Polly the Power Gamer may get his chance to shine shortly when we do our first skill challenge. So, let's go back here. Go down to edit. Okay, so we want to give them a skill challenge. I'm thinking they need a way to figure out that this is an iron pipe. I just sing this big song when adventures come. Oh, but Bard Kobold. That's the way to go. So we had mentioned that this is an inspection station. There's a way to inspect the pipe, perhaps, and see what's there. So let's put in some kind of device. Appears to be made of fired clay. In the center is a round metal plate held on by large bolts. An apparatus consisting of glass bulbs brass fittings and a cracked pointer gauge. It's not how you spell gauge. Gauge. I tried. There it is. Sits on top of it. Okay, so let's tell the dungeon master what this is, so they know. It's an iron pipe sealed with hardened clay to preserve and protect it. The device is a gauge. How do you spell gauge? For monitoring steam pressure. The what do we call it? The metal plate is an access port that can be opened with okay, so at this point you're doing an ability check of some kind of skill check. So in 5th Ed D&D, these are all based on your ability scores: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. You can read about those in the player's handbook and further details in the Dungeon Master's Guide if you are new to it. But essentially we are picking what abilities and or skills and or proficiencies and or tools would be useful in this scenario so that we can give the Dungeon Master a general idea of what kind of challenge this is to open it up, figure it out, whatever. So the metal plate, let's say they want to get into it. It can be opened with either a strength check to force it, or maybe let's see, common sense or intelligence, either one. So or an intelligence or wisdom check to figure out how to undo the bolts. We need to set a DC. Again, low level dungeon, but this thing has been down here for a while. I think the strength check will be harder than the bolts. To force, let's see. So let's call this one, this is a little more tricky, DC 15 to, let's say, rend the bolts. That's a good word, right? Oh, it's just no W. Rend the bolts, or an intelligence or wisdom check. DC, let's call it 10 to figure out how to undo the bolts. Other things that you could use here, just to reference if you're not familiar with 5th Ed rules. If you have a proficiency in something, a skill that would be appropriate, if you have a tool, a set of tools that would work here that would be helpful, like a crowbar or something like that for the strength check, all that kind of stuff can modify your roll here. But we're just giving some basic difficulty classes for how tough we want this to be. They'll be able to figure this out also if they want to investigate it with any kind of mechanical knowledge that might be appropriate. They might be able to figure that stuff out too if they're doing that, but we're going to leave that to the DM to describe. We're not going to bother putting that into the adventure notes because that will be in the overview part when we talk about what the pipe organ is. Okay. Metal plate is an access port just large enough for a medium-sized character to squeeze through. It can be opened. All right. And then we already told them what the apparatus was, didn't we? Yep. Yeah, the device. Okay. All right. So now they can get in there if they need to. They can figure out this is a steam monitoring thing. So there's some kind of steam pipe. Why do they need a steam pipe? Why do they need a steam pipe that's big enough for a person to fit into? It should open up the mystery a little bit. And for people that are into solving mysteries, it will throw some questions out there for them. All right, so we got the pipe A. This will be the pipe A exterior. And then once they can get into it, we will need a section for the pipe A interior. And we're going to do... quote, here's what I want them to read. So the pipe A interior, this narrow pipe is just wide enough for an adult to crawl through. Barely. The inside is black iron with a thin layer of rust evenly coating it. So we're going to have to start giving directions. It extends to the north east. It extends in a straight line. In a straight line from here, both to the northeast and to the southwest. Echoes seem to imply that it is quite long. All right, so that's where they are so far. We also want to make it so that they can't get into the interior of the thing, because we are currently, assuming you see this, right here where my finger is, we're going to put in something that makes it so that they cannot continue on further. So we will make that a DM note then, from this point. Steam pipe has not been used except by insects and other vermin for centuries. To the southwest, right? If an adventurer crawls to the southwest, they will be blocked as the pipe narrows significantly. If they crawl to the northeast, they will move beyond the outer wall of the city and eventually come to an overhead exhaust port beneath a farmhouse. Surprise. Okay, and then we'll have to write a thing for the exhaust port farmhouse. We can write that later on. Okay, we still have a couple more things to write here. Okay, back in the dungeon. We've got our door and our collapsed section. So let's do our collapsed area first. So we'll call that Cave in A. And so we want to indicate that this is a barrier that they cannot currently pass until they come up with some better ways to do that. We don't want them to go beyond this. We do want them to be able to access this door at some point, but we don't want them to go beyond that. So we want, if they do start to shift the cave-in bricks, more material will start to fall down and they'll start to hear some creaking noises and stuff. Almost threw a Star Wars joke, but I didn't want to change the joke theme. Well, feel free to joke away. I think Star Wars had some good music. We could do some Star Wars music. I'm sure we can come up with a way to get the Imperial March into our game somewhere in the future. Okay, let's cave in A. Here's what we're reading to the players. A section of the walls ahead have collapsed in a huge, not a better word, in a daunting pile of pink bricks. Broken slabs and rubble. Half buried in mess. You can see the corner of an old wooden door with rusty iron hinges. Alright. That's good for now. Now we'll tell the DM what happens. The cave-in can be shifted to unblock the door. We need to tell them what kind of any kind of appropriate skill or tool with strength or constitution checks. I view this as the strength check is just raw muscle. The constitution check is labor over time. You just muscle your way through it eventually, and even though you're picking up little stuff, you're eventually getting there. You're resisting fatigue and whatnot. So tools would also work here if they find some tools that are appropriate. Cave-in can be shifted to unblock the door with strength or constitution checks. But trying to move further down the corridor. Oh wait, trying to open the corridor beyond will begin to loose and let's call it something different. We'll begin to weaken. Welcome to the stream. He has his queen. Hello. Duel of the Fates dueling banjos would be cool. Yeah, I'm kind of okay with any kind of instrument from history, since this is a musical world. Presumably, they would have advanced their technology to the point beyond, let's say, the Renaissance period. In terms of their musical instruments, I think banjos would be perfectly fine. Trying to open the corridor beyond, we'll begin to weaken the structure on all sides and eventually cause another cave-in. Explorers will hear creaking and groaning of the earth. See boulders begin to come loose and be showered with dirt long before they cause another catastrophe. So we've given them a fair warning. If you continue on in this direction, past this door, then you will be in trouble. Okay. And close parentheses. Okay, once the door is open, we now have 2 doors to worry about. So we've got, we would call this door A, for lack of a better term, and then we'll call the other one door B. Let's call it door C. We may not get to it later on. So let's say, okay, did we mention, I want to make sure that we're mentioning all the things that they're saying. Large wall. Extend over to the central ceiling. Shifts. Okay. To your right at the edge of, to your right, you can just barely see a door frame in the shadows. That's 2 words. And then for the DM, the door frame. They'll know this by looking at the map, so we don't need to tell them where that goes. Okay. So that's door A. The mother, affectionately known by her elder son, Ozzy, as Mama, can have her room adorned with something by her younger son, Danzig. Mama. No, it's mother. Mother. I used to sing that song in high school. Because I'm old. All right. Okay, so door A, if you're following along, is this one here. This one's door C, and then this one will be door B. Just so we're all on the same page. Okay, so door A is going to lead into our little triangle room where they're going to encounter perhaps a trap or a mystery. Door B will be inside that. And then door C is out there that we haven't come up with yet. Yeah, apostrophes are the difference between fantasy and epic fantasy. That's why elven names are almost entirely apostrophes. Okay, so we're going to leave door C for now and just concentrate on A and B. So we've had a couple skill tests already to get them used to skills. Remember, we're training Norbert and Noob still on how to do skill tests. We don't have any combat yet. We're not quite there. But we do want to have some sort of a trap or an obstacle at some point. I think this might be a good spot for that in one of these. Obviously, there's a little bit of danger with the cave-in, but only if they push their luck So I'm thinking for in door A, we want to give them a little taste of, hey, this place is not necessarily perfectly safe for you. So perhaps there will be something in here. I'm thinking maybe somebody was in here and they were hiding and they set up a trap to protect themselves, but then they never left. Maybe they died down here or something like that. Yeah, that might work. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Or maybe they were hiding something down here. Maybe that's where they'll find their clue. So they set up a trap because they knew the Church of Rio was starting to get wise, and they were trying to protect whatever it is they were hiding down here. Okay. All right. So we've got door A and whatever is beyond it. And this old wooden door is was a sturdy barrier once upon a time, but is now decayed. Its iron bands rusted. Behind the gaps and cracks, you can see a triangular chamber made of the same bricks as the rest of the complex. As well as puzzle crossbow rooms. Example, room has a book with a collection of myths. Room B has statues that resemble some of the characters in the myths from the book. Correct statue chosen gets reward. Trigger trap otherwise. That might be good. Maybe we can start introducing our religious history here. That might be a good mini puzzle. These are followers of a faith who are trying to protect something special from the non-believers, so maybe they will use that to their advantage. So inside of here, that's a good idea. I think McSucket, we're going to use that. So we'll have, let's see, we'll do some statues and a pedestal. A stone, you spell pedestal, stone pedestal. And a collection of small statues lying, small statues on the floor, on the carpeted floor. Oh, no kobolds or dragons yet. Provided with a lyric, you have to touch the artist statue and hum the tune. That might work. That might be good. We can use some of our muses that we came up with last week and figure that out. All right, the old wooden door. You can see beyond it. You see inside a stone pedestal where we're going to have perhaps our book or our sheet, music sheet or something like that. Collection of small statues on the carpeted floor. Okay, at this point they're going to have to get into the room. So let's move on down. There's nothing special about door A. So we'll do, so let's call this, the pedestal room. Okay. So here comes our first puzzle. Remember, we're dealing with level 1 characters, so it needs to be pretty simple. We're training them. They don't know anything about the world yet, other than what we told them. Tip from before. Got tiers of skill checks. That's good. Difficulty 10 would be the strength target for breaking the gate, but it makes a lot of noise. Alerts the guards. Thief with tools. Confuse it with a 15 for minimum noise. That's good. That's a good tip. That way you can sort of stage it up. Like, okay, whatever you guys come up with, it's one of these. And then whatever the players can come up with to modify that, they can start adjusting those. But yeah, you have like the easy way, the medium way, the hard way for what you can come up with as a DM, and then players will inevitably come up with something that you did not think of, and you'll have a framework in which to base your DC that you make up on the spot. Good tip. Okay, so the pedestal room. So we're underground. I think we should have some velvet. This small triangular brick room is carpeted in violet velvet. It was surely quite luxurious when it was laid down, but now it is a mildewy, it's not really a word, but we're going to use it, mildewed, yeah, that works, mildewed, rat-chewed rag. Yep. Always steal good ideas from wherever you can get them. Mildewed, rat-chewed rag. Okay, now we've got their eyes pointed downward. So now think about what they're going to see as they lift their eyes up. So next they're going to see what's along the walls. We got to tell them about the door that's in there, because we're here, if you will recall, on our little mini map. Another door to your right is clad in iron sheets and seems to have survived in much better condition than anything else you have found thus far. Is that 2 words? Yes. Okay, so this is the door. There is a rectangular there's a rectangular let's call it a shelf. There's a small shelf sticking out of the center of the door. A stone pedestal in the center of the room has upon it a rectangular object wrapped in cloth, old cloth. I think it was 13, maybe 14. Yeah. 14 small statues made of stone, carved stone, and still bearing flecks of peeling paint, sit in a group nearby on the floor. They seem to all be depictions of women, different women, because all of our muses are female. Okay, depictions of different women. All right, that's a pretty good verbal description so far, and then presumably the group will move in and start investigating the room, so we can tell the DM what they have in here. All right. Oh yeah, we need some light sources. Let's start handing out light sources, assuming that they did not bring torches with them. The last holy water blessed by a champion. That's kind of cool. Yeah, we can give them a little reward. That's a good idea. Yeah, whenever you have players overcome a challenge, especially early on when you're doing training, so to speak, you giving them a reward is a good sort of way to encourage positive behavior. So that's a good idea. We can have something in there that they can use later on as their first loot, perhaps. Okay, so let's save where we are now because we've been typing for a while. Make sure to save your work. And let's go back to our wiki, to our religion, and to our muses, and come up with our puzzle. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, we only have 13, never mind. And a high priestess. Okay, so we're going to do, so from our 13 muses, we're going to have one of these is going to be the one that you need to use to unlock this door. Positive reinforcement. It's true. Oh, slide map over. Sorry, I must have bumped it. Partially so we can see the wiki page. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, let me get this guy. Oops, wrong one. There it is. There we go. Thank you for that. All right, now we can read much better. Yep, anytime I miss something like that, please feel free to let me know in the chat. This is a fairly complicated setup we've got going on. All right, what were we talking about? Okay, we need one of these muses to be our key. It needs to be something fairly easy that they're going to be able to get whatever the little riddle that we come up with is, or something like that. For example, respect is going to be a difficult thing to convey in some sort of little pun or riddle. So I'm thinking we're looking at Dusty, the Muse of Wishing and Hoping, or Garland, the Witch Slayer. That might be fairly easy. Daughter of the Mine, Heart Piece, Chain, something like that. We could definitely use one of those. Again, level 1, early days, you know, you don't want to give them anything crazy. Let's see. So we could do something like they're going to be using some lore at this point, maybe some religious knowledge when they get to this kind of stuff. So they might know a little bit of the stories, or at least the names of these people. We've got, I think, exchange, Supreme one. Piece. Just maybe any of these might work. I'm just going to copy these and bring them back over to where we were so we can stare at them, come up with a cool idea. Let's go back to our adventure. Down to our pedestal room. And I'm just going to paste these down here so that we can see them all on the same page. Okay, yep. Sorry about having the map in the way earlier. Wasn't looking at my screen enough. Hide the mountain. Not high enough. That's not bad. It's a little obscure, but I think maybe if we make the statue have some kind of, she's standing on a mountain, that might be good. Yeah, that's not bad actually. Okay, yeah, I think we're going to go with that one. That's good. Okay, so your basic puzzle setup, we need to indicate to the players what they need to do fairly simplistically. We need to give them a little bit of the knowledge that they need before they have to use it. We're doing this all in a very self-contained single room, so this is easy. You can spread this out over the course of the dungeon if you need to, but for our purposes, this is room 1 of our first dungeon, so gotta be pretty simple. Okay, the iron door is locked with a complex mechanical complex mechanism. That can be opened if the correct statue, I guess they're statuettes, correct statuette, in this case it's Diana the supreme one is placed on the small shelf, which serves as the... Yeah, that's fine. I don't need to describe it in too much detail. The DM running the adventure can describe how it happens. We just need to give them the basics and let them fill in the details. Okay, so that's how the door opens. The iron door is locked. A complex mechanism. Open if the correct statuette is placed on the small shelf. Alternately, it can be let's see. It can be I guess the door is less susceptible than the wall. The wall around the door can be destroyed over time with appropriate tools or spells. Obviously, we'll just leave that up to the DM. Myth in the book has the key to the door. Once entering the room, selecting the right statue, they get the thing, like a metal piece or something. That could be. Yeah, maybe the statue opens up. That could work too. I kind of like the statue on the shelf idea. But we do need to put something in here to discourage them from just trying one statue after another. So, all right, let's go through what all is in here. Let's see. The statuettes are the... Oh, we did say it was 13, not 14, right? Small statues. Okay, statuettes are symbolic representations of the 13 muses. And then we'll put in a link. Uses the wrapped object is a songbook Are you listening to my soundtrack, Jim? Is that what you're hearing? I don't know what's playing right now. I selected a bunch of copyright-free music from, I think it's YouTube as a library, and I slapped it all together. I have no idea what's playing right now. I've got it turned off on my end of things. Okay, the statue is a symbolic representation of the 13 muses. We need a link in there, don't we? So let's put a wiki link. I think we can search for muses let's get rid of this. Remember the slug on the left, don't change that one. We just change the thing on the right to change your text. Is a songbook containing various songs and poems attributed to the Muses. Let's see. One song title within has been circled in red ink. We'll make this one pretty simple. We don't want them to be too lost on the first room. One song title was in it and has been circled with red ink. It'll be called Alas, There Be No Mountain that is high enough which is attributed to which was inspired by Diana, the Supreme One. Okay. Alas, there be no mountain that is high enough. I guess that would be capitalized since it's song title. But alas, there remains no mountain that is high enough. The iron door is locked with a complex mechanism, and the Supreme One is placed on the small shelf. If examined closely with, I'm going to use Jim's tiers of how to beat things here. Examine closely a TC10 let's see, intelligence check reminds a character actually I just make it examine closely the Diana statuette is standing on top of a mountain. Peak. And we'll just give that one to them for free, I think. And instead of making it a DC test, we can do a DC if they want to do religious lore or something like that. But we'll come back to that later and set those, because let's finish the puzzle first, and then we'll come back and fill in some details. All right. We've given an alternate way to get through it. And then what's beyond door B? So we know door B is that. Okay. So beyond is, we're going to call it the small shrine. Those of you following along, that's this little room that they've just gotten into. And that's going to be where we give them the reward. And also, we need a trap. We forgot the trap, too. So we'll have, if the incorrect statuette is tried, we need some simple mechanical sort of smackdown to punish them without killing them, hopefully. The incorrect statue is tried. Well, that's an iron door. We could just shock them. A static shock erupts from the iron door and deals, let's do 1 point. This is the training one. And deals 1 point of damage to anyone within 5 feet. Door within 5 feet. Okay. Okay. Static shock. Okay, so we got our little mini trap or training trap. Very simple puzzle. Gives them a little taste of who the muses are. Maybe they'll make some sort of test of lore, or they'll be religiously minded and give them some information about the muses. Get them into that for future plot purposes. Okay, what's in the small shrine? Let's see, we need this. All right, making it bold and in quotes. Small shrine. Beyond the ironclad door is let's see, there's another small chamber. Lined in brick, pink bricks, velvet, drapery, and surrounded by dozens of unlit candles. That's what we needed in the first room, some kind of light source. So you can read if they didn't happen to bring something. So they were looking from bottom up. Small shelf sticking on the door. Different women. Hanging from the ceiling. From the stone ceiling slab is an iron chandelier. Clutching half melted candles. Okay, back down to the small shrine. Beyond the ironclad doors, another small chamber lined in pink bricks, velvet drapery, and surrounded by dozens of unlit candles. Three cushioned benches. Are stacked at one end. The room tapers down to a narrow wall that has been adorned with let's say adorned with shelves, each one contains small items yeah, you don't want to just tell them it's a shrine. You want them to kind of figure it out on their own. So each one contains small items related to the statues of the muses. Scraps of religious texts and tiny carved instruments. Okay. And then inside here, they're going to find the goodies in a brass bowl. In the center, there is a small glass vial shaped like a crystal heart, which is full of a silvery liquid. Adjacent, you also find a shield-shaped scale carved with musical symbols. Okay. All right, so as suggested previously, we're going to give them a little reward of some special holy water, perhaps, that they can use for purposes later on, for blessings and whatnot. Muses were all about inspiration, so we could turn it into like a potion of inspiration, something along those lines. So let's see what's in here. Okay, so here's what we tell the DM about what is in here. This shrine contains religious objects that may be worth. Now here's where you're going to start assigning gold piece values to things. If I remember correctly, in the DMG, they have some guides about such. Yeah, about treasure on page 133, so we'll flip there very quickly. See what they suggest for a small treasure. We're giving them religious objects that they can use to either learn more about our plotline or to sell. Treasure. I think these aren't really treasure hoards or anything like that, but okay, so our small art objects are worth about 25 gold pieces. Looks like on here. So, yeah, and that's what we're going to use for our small stuff. So we're going to give them a little mini reward while we're in here. Shrine contains religious objects that may be worth 25 GP. That's gold pieces if you've never played D&D before. In total. The glass vial contains a potion of, it's called inspiration now. I don't know if that's actually one of the potions they have in this one, but we will make one. Potion of inspiration. The scale is actually a dragon scale. So we did have a little bit of dragon in there for our kobold friend. Scale is actually a dragon scale. And I believe we were calling these we call them the octave keys before. So it's actually a dragon scale and is one of the 8 octave keys. Okay, so we're giving them their first clue. We've given them one of the 8 keys that they will eventually need to get into the chamber that I envisioned later on where the pipe organ is being held. That was in here. And then we need to figure out why is this key in here, because it's not just here for fun. So my thought is that the history behind this place is that it was hidden from the church. They figured out that the church was onto them. They were getting desperate, the people who ran this particular place, and were trying to finish it. So they took the keys that are required to open the thing, and they split them up amongst the last of the followers and got them away in the hopes that they could potentially come back to this place later on. One of the keys was hidden inside here because they couldn't get out of town, perhaps, something like that. So they found the safest place back here in this little shrine and stuck it back here, and it has been undiscovered since. And then whoever hid it here left or went back into town, and perhaps they will discover that information later on. But they found one of the 8 octave keys, so that's pretty good. This is a good start for now. I think we can figure out what's behind the other door next time, because I'm thinking it will be probably our combat encounter. Perhaps the rats have gotten down to there. So we had a little trap, we had a little puzzle, we had a little skill test. We still need a potential for combat. I think the rats will be behind that other door. Perhaps they will have chewed into someone else's cellar somewhere else in town, and we can encounter somebody else, another NPC or something, when they go in that direction. Okay, so let's save this section. All right. So this is a pretty good amount so far. So we'll walk them through their little thing. Eventually we'll discuss where they go if they get into the pipe and go to the farmhouse, and if I assume the farmer will be surprised that someone's coming out from some grate beneath his home. So we need to talk about the dragon scale. So I was thinking, I am a fan of props myself, and I think that perhaps this would be a good time to show you how to make some props. So let me get this set up so you can see well enough, and we will make ourselves the beginnings of a prop. I'm going to adjust the camera a little bit so it's a little bit easier. Let's see what's going on. Okay, let me figure out what my boundaries are here. All right. All right. So if I keep my work in this little area, you should be able to see what's going on. So you can make props out of anything that you want. Let's get that in the middle there. I myself am a particular fan of cardboard and paper. That kind of thing is my go-to. What we're going to use this time is a little bit of foam board. If you've never seen this before, it's a stiff paper-covered extruded foam material. You can find it at hobby shops and all kinds of places, office supply stores and stuff like that. This particular one was from a hoard collected from a friend who used to work at a place that had such things long ago, and he took these as payment for services rendered. But we're going to make ourselves a little prop out of it. Nothing special with this in particular. You can cut it with just about anything you want. I will sort of sketch out the shape that I was envisioning when I was thinking of this thing, and then we'll just cut around the edges and see what we can do with it. So I think of a dragon scale. We're going to make it kind of large and shield shaped, as we discussed in the description in the dungeon. So I'll draw just some edges around the outside there, like that, and then I will begin to cut it out. Again, not the perfect setup for arts and crafts, but I will show you do not have to be super accurate with this stuff. This will be weathered and whatnot. You can use a hobby knife if you prefer. I'm just using scissors. Keep in mind, if you're making a bunch of these, you're going to want to keep the design pretty simple, because you're going to have to make, in this case, 8. Presumably we want to have props for all 8 of the octave keys. For those of you looking for the musical puns, if you know any music theory, we're looking into the chromatic scale, which technically has 12 notes, but we need chromatic dragons, scales, dragon scales. Yeah, you get the idea. Okay, so there's our basic shape. We chopped up our chunks. Here's what we got so far. It'll be hard to see because I'm not all the way zoomed out. Yeah, because it's a scale. So what can you do with foam core? Kind of anything you want. Since this thing has been battered and beaten over the course of years, and it was originally an animal product, you can kind of rough it up a little bit just by gently bending with your hands. If you want to give it a little bit of a bend, which I do. You don't want to go too far or you will snap it, but that you will just turn that into some sort of cool damage or something. Okay, so we've got our general shape worked out. Other stuff you can do with this material, you can poke into it with any kind of sort of round tip tool. Got these scissors here which have a nice round point on them. Might use that and do some, I think it's called embossing. When you poke designs into stuff and leave textured ridges. So let's see how this works. It'll be a little tricky to see with the light, but we'll try it. We'll try and keep this all in shot. In this case, they're made out of paper because this DM is cheap. So we're going to just put in little indications that this has been sort of carved. Again, I'm not going for any kind of like super realism. You can definitely do that kind of stuff if you want to. We are going for just the general idea of a dragon scale with some stuff carved onto it. I don't even really have a plan yet, and I just kind of make it as I go. I think that you will find if you are prop making for a game, you will not have oodles of time to do stuff. So, because you'll also be planning your games, getting people together. So you want to keep things relatively simple and quick and efficient. We'll try and do some more prop making over the course of the campaign. I especially like making miniature kind of stuff for dungeons and towns and things like that. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you can get online. There are tons and tons of videos that you can find. I recommend DM Scotty at DM's Craft, Black Magic Craft, Wylock's Crafting Vids. There's one called Landvater. He does some cool stuff. Just go from those to start with, and then work your way around. Okay, we have our shield outline kind of worked out. We need some other designs in here to indicate that this is a special object. Yes, Mixucket tea stained paper is a great prop. Your maps are important words that you really want your players to hold on to. You are correct. Other things I've seen, You can stain with tea or coffee. You can. One of our friends made a leather map one time, which was really cool, out of some scrap leather and some leather working tools or something along those lines, with some burning, like a wood burning tool, I think, was used. You can make objects out of fabrics if you want to, like let's say there's a flag or something that you need to hand off. You can make stuff like that. Things made out of wood, things made out of clay, like oven dry clay or air dry clay, stuff like that's really cool. Okay, so we got our 8-octave keys. I'm not too worried right away about what's going to be on the rest of the keys, but we can put part of a design on this one and get it going. It's got pretty decent texture. It's down there, maybe a millimeter or two in terms of depth. I am no great artist, but we can definitely. I like the idea of a musical instrument. So I think that we will do on this one, I think we'll do a sitar, because we've already got that as part of our lore. So I'll map this out with pencil so that I don't make too many mistakes. And then we'll draw it in with some of our tools. So a sitar is basically a guitar-like sort of object. It's got a long neck. And look like this. We're going to give it triangular head like that. A couple of these. I'm sure this is not perfectly accurate. And we give it a teardrop shaped hole down here. That's a good start. Again, this is just a sort of representative kind of thing of what we're doing. So I've gotten rid of the lead in the pencil. I'm just going to use the sort of rounded head and see what kind of effect that gives me. Yep, that works. If you push gently, it does put a little bit of a dent into the foam core. Again, you don't want to press too hard or you'll punch through. It might not necessarily be all that bad, depending on what you're trying to do. I'm just going for, oops, can make out. Let me try slightly bigger. So here's another one where it's, the pin part is not extended. Yeah, that's a little better. So this one will give me kind of a bevel. And we'll come around. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to play in person with people and can give them a prop pretty early in the game, you'll hook the people who need tactile kind of stuff. Let's make sure this is all in the shot. Again, apologies if my hand gets in the way here. It's not really the perfect way to do this. Just kind of pressing and then going back over it until I get roughly the depth that I want. This will give us our embossed, engraved kind of look. Sorry if it's jiggly too. They have a standing desk and the webcam is clamped to the standing desk, so whenever I'm applying pressure, I'm probably also jiggling the camera. It's action shot. Okay, so that's a good start so far. And then I'm going to eventually paint this. But I'll try and give you an idea about if I can get my lid to come back out. So when you go over this with paints and washes and stuff like that, it'll start to pop out a little bit more. You'll go with a dark wash. The dark wash will settle in the lines like so. You'll end up with a slightly darker kind of sunken area. And you can add colors to it. We can decide what color the different dragons are going to be. This one's going to be the sitar. It might be related to our Loot Fox hero, who has the one sitar. Ooh, chromatic circle. I didn't know that was a thing. I did not take any music theory classes in school. Also, I was a drummer, so a lot of the melodic stuff is missed out. I could play into the design. Yeah, I was thinking, since this is sort of a shield-shaped kind of a thing, that you could have like a circle of these that go into appropriate slots when they find the big secret door, super secret door. And we'll have different colors for the different dragon scales. We can have a history of how they got dragon scales, how they made them magical or whatever they did to them. Maybe they can have a certain power or something. But this will be one of them. I was thinking one of our bad guys might have one that they have to get eventually to challenge him and get it. They assemble the chromatic circle. Would be cool. Yeah, this could be green. Green could be a nice, good one to start. We could come up with all kinds of lore to go with them. But this will be our main mystery for our low-level stuff. Is like, what is this thing? What was it doing here? Why was it special? Why is it magical? What does it do? Eventually, when they find the door, and they won't be able to open it, they'll be like, where are the other 7 of these? Well, how do we get a hold of the rest of them? What do we need to do to open this thing and find out what's beyond it? So it'll be the mystery that they'll be solving from level 1, probably to at least level 5 for sort of a low experience level areas. More mystery solving, less hardcore combat murder. Okay, we've been running for a couple hours. That's pretty good. I will work more on this thing and get it prettified. Maybe I'll make a video about maybe a sped up video so you can see the full process. See some of the other stuff I did for next time if I have time for that. We accomplished quite a bit in terms of our dungeon. Let me slide this to the side and put up some of the rest of our stuff. There we go. So quite a bit accomplished. Again, you can check out our social media for all of our updates. If you got the newsletter for Obsidian Portal just went out this morning. It has more information about stuff. We have a YouTube channel where if any of the videos that you want to see about this show or any of our other shows are not on our Twitch channel, they will eventually end up on our YouTube channel. We hope anyway. And you can check those out also. Go to the website. It's livefreeordiebarred.obsidianportal.com. If you want to read along as we go or catch up on stuff that you missed or read some of the details that I skimmed over too quickly for you. Check out some of our older episodes here on Twitch. What else is coming up? We've got my show next week, Thursdays, 11 a.m. in the morning, Eastern Time. We're not due for a time change here anytime soon, are we? daylight savings and all that. But it's GMT -4 if you're not in the Eastern time zone. Our other regular show is on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. That's Kalak. I'm calling it Kalak Hacks. He was doing DST builds. He has built a Pathfinder 2 character sheet for Obsidian Portal. But he's getting ready to start on another project, which is, you should check it out. It's going to be about making your OP pages, customizing them within the Send-In account. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff, and I'm going to be watching that and hopefully using some of those tricks here, because I don't know that many tricks, and I want to know some more. That's pretty much it. Thanks for joining us and playing along and participating and coming up with cool ideas to add to the game. If you have additional cool ideas, please feel free to put them in the chat next week, in the YouTube comments section on our old videos, or message me on Obsidian Portal. I am Jinx001. And that's pretty much it for episode 7. I hope you had a good time. And hopefully we will see you next week. Thanks for joining us. Bye.